Welcome to the United States of Small Business, a podcast where the essence of American entrepreneurship is celebrated in every episode. With host John Quick at the helm, join us as we embark on a journey through the heart of the nation, uncovering the inspiring stories of small business owners from coast to coast. Experience the vibrant energy of bustling cities and the serene beauty of small towns, all while discovering how individuals are turning their entrepreneurial dreams into reality, even against the greatest odds. Each episode brings you face to face with the dreamers, creators, and doers who form the economic backbone of our country, all sharing their spirit of innovation and resilience. Whether you are in the early stages of sowing the seeds for your own business, scaling new heights in your current venture, or simply captivated by tales of grit and triumph, you are in the right place. Tune in on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and beyond. For deeper insights and to connect with the heart and soul of America's main streets, visit UnitedStatesOfSmallBusiness.com. Subscribe to United States of Small Business with host John Quick now and be inspired by the powerful stories of entrepreneurship, community, and the unwavering pursuit of the American dream. Begin your journey of inspiration with us today.
Welcome to another episode of the United States of Small Business podcast, where we uncover the stories behind America's most inspiring entrepreneurs. I'm your host, John Quick. Today, we're joined by John Mickelson, managing partner of Midwest Growth Partners. John has a rich history in finance and investment, and today he'll share how his firm got its start, the key lessons he's learned along the way, and advice for those looking to step into the realm of small business ownership. We'll also dive into the fascinating story of their acquisition of the iconic Maytag Farms in Iowa. There's a lot to learn, so let's get started. Without further ado, John, welcome to the United States of Small Business podcast. I'm glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, we have a connection. I'm from Iowa. You have a business in Iowa. It's pretty awesome, small world. Tell folks you have this really awesome company called Midwest Growth Partners. Tell folks how that business started and kind of the story behind it is pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, so we're a private equity fund, and you already hit part of it, but Iowa and private equity, normally don't go together very often, but we actually wear that as a badge of honor on our sleeve, and then also use it as a competitive advantage. And so, 11 years ago, when we got this thing started, my partners and I came to realization that institutional capital, while there was plenty of it and there's a lot of good folks that managed it, it wasn't getting to places like Iowa, or more particularly rural communities, and not necessarily getting to food and agricultural related businesses. And so that was our grand thesis. We thought someone needs to serve that market with institutional capital for succession planning type transactions, and also growth investment transactions. And so we kicked off Fund One in tail end of 2013, and we're now investing out of our third fund and getting ready to raise our fourth fund.
So are you kind of standing alone in Iowa as one of the only folks that do this at this scale?
Yeah, there's other good folks that we partner with and refer stuff back and forth to. There's a few groups that maybe do earlier stage investing, so more of your traditional, venture capital or startup type things. And then there's a few groups that do later stage investments like us, but some of those are more family office oriented or are independent sponsor oriented. And so in terms of having sort of a traditional GP LP model like we have, it's a very, very short list.
So my guess is you're probably like a hero in a lot of these communities. As we know, the manufacturing jobs have kind of left Iowa back in the 80s and 90s. Are people are you giving kind of a second chance to a lot of these communities to make sure that these businesses stay in Iowa? In the Midwest?
It's funny you mentioned that. So I think a lot of our economic development efforts as a state have focused on job creation, but you hit the nail on the head. I think job retention in many cases is just as important, if not more important. And so if you think about a small community, maybe a manufacturing company there that employs 50 to 100 people, Those are super important jobs for that community. A lot of times it's off farm income. So you might have one spouse that farms and one spouse that, works in our facility, and they get, living wages and benefits and stuff like that, which enables the other spouse to farm. And so those jobs are very important. You say people view us as a hero. I don't know if we're quite to that status, nor will we ever be. There's a lot of misperceptions around, who private equity is and what private equity does. If you think about, Pretty Woman, Richard Gere was, splitting up companies, and you think about people say, Shark Tank, or they remember the attack ads against Mitt Romney when he was running for president. So there's a lot of that perception out there. But, when we show up, we're showing up in, Chevy pickup trucks, and we're, Iowa guys. And so it's a much different reality, I think, than what people sort of have a preconceived notion of what it might be.
Well, one of the brands that you all have is an iconic brand, one that's been around for, I don't know, 100 years or maybe more, the Maytag Farms. Tell me about that story about, putting that underneath your guys' portfolio. That's a really cool business to see stay alive and in the hands of folks that are actually in the Midwest.
Yeah, so it got started in the early 1940s. So we're right at kind of the 80-year mark. And most people are familiar with, the Maytag name as it relates to appliances. And so the Maytag family, their major business was making, washing machines and things like that in Newton, Iowa. But one of the family members had traveled in Europe and had become a fan of artisan cheese, in the 1930s, 1940s. And he came back and said, I want to start the first great American blue cheese. And so he, pivoted away from the family business, the appliance business, and started making Maytag blue cheese in 1941, I believe. And, as you said, over the years, it became an iconic brand. I don't know, how we prove this or how the Maytag family can prove this, but once upon a time, it was supposedly the most called out ingredient on restaurant menus in the world. So you might go to a fancy steak house, and you can order a steak, and then you can order Maytag blue to go on top of that. And so a lot of people have a lot of good memories of a great product. We have other products as well, but predominantly blue is our biggest seller. And it continues to be a great product. So fast forward from 1941 to 2018, there were now, I believe, 13 owners of the cheese business, all members of the Maytag family. So it was kind of third and fourth generation from the founders, and none of those 13 lived in Iowa. None of them were active in the business. The third generation, they were sort of in their 80s. The fourth generation, they were like in their 50s. And so, they would kind of see each other at family reunions and things like that, but they weren't sort of actively managing the business like most business owners would. So as a group, they collectively decided that it was time to sell. We participated in the sale process, and ultimately were successful in acquiring the business in 2018. So partially because of the family being somewhat passive on their ownership, the company had not had sort of standard reinvestment back into the business, and so sales talent, technology, food safety things, new product development, ERP systems, CRM systems, you name it. Those were all opportunities for us to professionalize the business, automation of equipment, automation of packaging, I forgot about. And so those are all opportunities for us when we acquired the business. And, those are things that we're still working on today. We've made a lot of progress there. Still have the same great products, just trying to make more of it and make it more profitable. So that's our challenge out there every day that we're working on. And if you like blue cheese, it's still the best blue cheese in the world.
It is pretty awesome. It is literally probably the best blue cheese in the world. My parents would agree. They are big fans of the Maytag blue cheese. And this is like an actual, folks are going to be listening to this from all over the US and really all over the world, this is like an actual farm, like in Iowa. It's got the white barn, if I remember correctly. It's got at least the last time I went there was maybe 2016, maybe 15, and they had a little store you could go into and watch the little video on how it started. I mean, it's a pretty big operation in terms of cheese, but it's also a fairly nostalgic operation. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be one of the most scenic and beautiful, venues sort of around. It's about 45 minutes from Des Moines, so it's kind of just on the edge of, too far for weddings and things like that. But you could definitely see, someone wanting to have events out there because it's so scenic. The office building, so the administrative building, was actually designed by the guy that designed Steve Jobs' house. So it was a famous architect that Fritz Maytag had gotten to know in San Francisco. Fritz, even though they sold the business to us, Fritz continued on our board for a couple of years and is just a awesome, tremendous, interesting guy. But Fritz had gotten to know this architect, and he designed the office building. So the office building is cool in and of itself. And then, like you mentioned, the cheese making barn and facility kind of down at the bottom of the hill. Yeah, just classic Americana, beautiful landscape.
So what have you learned along the way? Your firm has been fairly successful. What were some of the things? I'm sure there's speed bumps in any business and peaks and lows. What are some of the things you've learned along the way from doing this?
Yeah, so Maytag is one of about 30 investments that we've made in the last 11 years, and I don't think this podcast is designed to be 2 days long, so I don't have enough time to go through all the lessons that we've learned. We've made mistakes. We've run into situations that no one could plan for. For instance, with Maytag in particular, 30 or 40% of their sales historically have gone to restaurants, and so if you think about COVID, overnight we lost 40% of sales, and so that was one we did not see coming. Things like that you can't plan for. But in terms of mistakes made, I would say that one thing that we've gotten better at as a firm is that because a lot of these businesses are like Maytag, where they've maybe been underinvested in terms of people and systems and technology, we do a better job before we acquire the company of planning ahead for what those investments might be. And so if we think it's going to cost, $500,000, if historically we would have thought it was going to cost $500,000, we now know that it's really probably $1.5 million. And so reinvesting back in the business and planning for that ahead of time and capitalizing the business in a certain way is, something that we've gotten better at. And so, back to the preconceived notions about private equity, like all of our businesses were investing back into, and so we're making investments back into the business. We're not sort of stripping them and taking stuff out. And so we've gotten better at handicapping what that's going to be and knowing that it's probably going to be more than what we originally thought. And so that's been an evolution that we've learned over time.
Yeah, it seems like that way in life in general. You think it's one price, and then you get into the mix of it, and you're like, okay, that was 3 times as much as what I thought it was going to cost.
That's right. Yeah.
So what's some advice you give folks? There's going to be folks listening in on this that maybe they want to start their first coffee shop, or maybe they have 5 coffee shops and they want to franchise their coffee shops, and they're going to look at what you do and see it being very successful. So what's some advice you'd give to folks that maybe want to start their entrepreneurial journey and they just don't know how to make that first step?
Yeah, I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. Started a lawn mowing business when I was 11. My mom's a realtor, my dad's a life insurance salesman, so I've kind of been around the, eat what you kill type environment, and just have a sort of innate comfort in that. And then in undergrad and graduate school, participated in the Papa John Entrepreneurial Centers and served on that board for a number of years. And so I've had sort of the nurturing and then also the real life experience, but also the educational side. So entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and that's okay. You can go work for a huge company and create a ton of value and work as an entrepreneur, I think is the word. But create change and create value within a big company. And that's great for a lot of people. That's the route to go. To be an entrepreneur, on the true side of it, requires a tremendous amount of, I would say, risk tolerance. So, you have to there's certain points, inflection points in your life where you have to, just sort of be willing to lay it all out there and have enough confidence that if it doesn't work out, that you'll kind of pick up the pieces and go on and do something else. MGP's had a good 11-year run, but I've had businesses that haven't made it, and you learn as much in those instances as you do in the instances that work out. And then having a good support system, I think, is important too. So when MGP got started, we had just had I believe our third son at the time. And, I told my wife, hey, I'm going to start this thing and quit my job and work a lot harder and make a lot less money for the first couple of years. And she was like, oh, why would you do that? And I kind of went into my pitch about why I thought it was a good idea. And she listened to about 30 seconds of that and was just like, yeah, whatever, go do it. So, without that support and trust and her sort of allowing that to happen, I probably wouldn't have been able to make that decision.
So who's been a hero in your life? There's probably a lot of folks that look up to you. Who's somebody that you've looked up to along the way and been a hero, and why?
Yeah, I've always been drawn to strong male figures in athletics and in business. And so, I played college football. Kirk Ferentz was my coach. I was in his first recruiting class, 26 years ago or whatever that was. And seeing 26 years ago, no one liked him and no one knew who he was and no one wanted to hire him. But he just came in and kept his head down and went to work and sort of avoided the highs and avoided the lows. And basically he still does the same thing today, even though he's, famous and wealthy and all those things, but he's kind of the same guy. He is the same guy. So learned a lot from that. And he continues to have a big influence on my life. And then I'd say just the greatest generation, business folks. A lot of them have passed, unfortunately, but if you look around here, Bill Knapp, Bill Kraus, Pomerantz, John Ruan, I try to, anytime I can read a book and learn from those guys, and emulate some of the stuff that they did. I try to do that. There's that greatest generation. They had, certainly they had, issues that today probably wouldn't fly, but they did a tremendous amount in terms of building great businesses and giving back to the community and creating enterprises that exist 50 years later. So a lot of respect for those guys too.
That's awesome. Well, 20 minutes here has gone by in a flash. I really appreciate your time. It's been fun hearing some of your story, and as we chatted about before, my mom is very excited to listen to this episode.
Well, send me her address and your address, and we'll make sure you guys get some cheese.
Awesome. Well, the claim to fame for our family, she would probably pinch me if I didn't mention this, is that my mom's grandfather was first to production with the electric washing machine. We beat Maytag by months. If you go into the Jasper County Museum in Iowa, it's got my great grandfather's first electric washing machine that he made, and it's right in front of Fred Maytag. So
that's awesome.
So I think it's awesome that what you all are doing in the Midwest, and I think that you guys are experiencing some awesome fruit, and you have some really awesome brands under you, and I wish you nothing but success. Do you have any last minute thoughts here before we head out?
No, I appreciate you, highlighting small business. It's the, engine and the catalyst for, really American society in terms of creating opportunities, creating wealth, giving people opportunities for advancement. So really appreciate you highlighting that.
Well, that's great, John. I wish you nothing but success. For folks listening in, if you just caught the tail end here, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing. You'll get to hear a story of a company that acquires other companies and makes sure that they are run successfully and have long-term growth in mind. So, and they have a very iconic brand, Maytag Farm, which has some of the best blue cheese in the world, folks. I'm going to put the link in the description. And I need folks, if you like cheese or blue cheese, you need to go onto this website and buy some, because I guarantee it'll be the best blue cheese you ever have in your whole life. So, John, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, I'm John from the United States of Small Business Podcast.
Thank you, John.